Thank you everybody for joining us. I'm Allison Franz and I'm the Communications Manager for Missoula County. I also help lead the Joint Information Center, which provides accurate information on how our local agencies are responding to COVID. The JIC is hosting this Q&A session today to help provide you with accurate information on the temporary safe outdoor space, which is a partnership between United Way, Hope Rescue Mission, and Missoula County. We'll have representatives from all those organizations here to answer your questions. Before we get to the Q&A, I just want to run through briefly how that's going to work. Right now, you probably noticed that you are all muted. And so if you have a question, you'll use the raise hand function that's in the top right corner. And then we're going to run down that list and call on each person with your hand raised. And then when you hear your name, we'll turn your microphone on and you can ask your question, and then we'll turn it back off when you're done. And then we do have a few people joining us on the phone, it looks like, so we'll have some time to run through the phone questions at the end too. And because there are lots of people on today who might want to ask a question, we ask that you keep your questions and comments civil and brief, preferably 3 minutes or less. Any members of the media who are on should feel free to ask your questions throughout. And just a quick note that this is being recorded. All right, now I'm going to introduce Susan Haypatrick, who is the Chief Executive Officer of United Way, and Jim Hicks, the Director of Hope Rescue Mission, and they're going to just give a brief overview of the project, and then we will get going with the Q&A. Susan and Jim.
Thanks, Allison, and thanks everybody for being here today to learn more about the temporary safe outdoor space, the facts, and how the program is going to operate. So first of all, what is it? It is a safe, healthy, secure, staffed 24/7 environment on private land that prioritizes serving with dignity people experiencing homelessness who are not accessing services currently. It's limited to up to 40 people. A goal of the project is to offer people safe space during the pandemic and link them to services, including appropriate, sustainable housing. This project is a partnership between United Way and Missoula County, which was in charge of the logistics of setup, Hope Rescue Mission, which is staffing the project, the faith community, other nonprofits, law enforcement, and other first responders, private businesses, county emergency management, and Reaching Home, Missoula's 10-year plan to end homelessness. The site has opened. There are approximately 15 people there now. It includes the following facilities and services: 20 two-person tents spaced for social distancing, bathroom facilities, hand washing, trash removal, food, outreach workers, case management, safety precautions, wellness screenings, links to hotels, housing, and healthcare services, and PPE, masks, gloves, and cleaning supplies. Those of us behind the temporary SOS believe that this temporary federally funded project on private land can actually improve our community by giving up to 40 homeless people a safe, legal alternative other than sleeping in their cars or camping in our neighborhoods without access to bathrooms or trash removal or any resources whatsoever. We believe the space has the potential to reduce demand on our emergency service providers, our healthcare system, and law enforcement. We know there is plenty of opposition to this project. I've said this before, those of us working on homeless issues are accustomed to being criticized, to being called naive, stupid, and even worse. We are accustomed to being told that we're ruining our community. We are unlikely to convince our opponents otherwise. And although we have been ridiculed for saying this, we believe that this project is the right thing, the safer, healthier thing, not just for the unhoused people who will have access to this space during this cold COVID winter, but we believe it's also the safer, healthier thing for our community for the reasons I've just mentioned. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our partner, Jim Hicks, Executive Director of Hope Rescue Mission.
Thank you, Susan. Let me just underscore again that this is a temporary, safe outdoor space, COVID driven. And we'll have a chance to answer many questions, but just let me give a little report of boots on the ground, what is happening now, and some of the comments from the residents. Prior to this particular site, their lives were filled with flight or fight. And this has provided them a safe, secure place to begin to build that upward mobility that they need. Just real quick, here's how we at Hope Rescue Mission have approached this for staffing. We want to build relationships, climbing into their world, so to speak, to see where they are at. And this has been a long-term process with our outreach director, April Seat, building those relationships with people at the Reserve Street encampment, as well as other encampments. After building those relationships, building a reputation with them that they can trust people. After that reputation, having real conversation with them about what is needed for them to take the next step. After that conversation, there is plenty of room for what I want to call confrontation in helping them overcome obstacles so that they can get to that last step of true upward mobility, true transformation. And we are so glad to see, even in this small time that we've been open, to see those goals being met as we work with the residents that are there. Just to answer a couple more questions, they do sign some rights and responsibilities when they come on the property. They sign when they go off. They sign when they come back on the property. And just let me address a couple of things real quick. There were in the public comments, a citizen said that there had been 21 emergency calls to the temporary safe outdoor space since it opened. That is entirely not true. There's not been any calls out there. And another issue that came up is that there was a loud party on Monday night with music and all of those things. Just let me say that is not the case either. Obviously, our staff is there, and neither one of those things are true. We know there will be maybe well-intentioned false reports, but that's why we're staffed. That's why we're approaching it the way we are. And before I quit speaking, I just want to say thanks to Missoula businesses, the county, the city, so many people, United Way, that have come in and helped us. This kind of a space has been in our heads and hearts for a long time, but we did not realize back when we were talking about it, how quickly and how good it would come about. And I want to say a huge thanks to so many people who are behind this, who have helped donate, who are asking good, helpful questions. And from our part at Hope Rescue Mission, we just want to say thank you. And with that, Allison, I'll turn it back to you.
Or are you turning it back to me, Allison? So I am going to be, so as a reminder, please raise your hands. Please keep your comments limited to no more than 3 minutes. And obviously we all appreciate it if you keep them civil. It's kind of Dixie cup and string up here at my house. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to unmute you. And the first person is someone named Susie who has her hand raised.
Oh, I guess that's me.
And that is you.
Okay. This is Susie Orr, and I live in the Orchard Homes area, and I drive across the Reserve Street Bridge every day, and I see the tents, the different different tent structures that are set up there. And I just want to say thank you for all you're doing. A lot of people think that homeless people are homeless because they want to be homeless. And all I can say is walk a mile in somebody's shoes before you think that. And I am very appreciative of everything that you're doing to with this temporary shelter. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Susie. Megan Locke.
Hi there. My name is Megan. I'm a community member. I also work in nonprofit. I just wanted to echo the last commenter and say what a blessing this is to the community, and that I recognize all of your extremely hard work. I also wondered if you might speak on how providing shelter and basic needs in a safe place will help community members to grow and to gain employment and to be able to have independent living for those who maybe don't understand that. And lastly, I would just also like to encourage those who have maybe some negative opinions on the matter to volunteer at the temporary safe outdoor space and perhaps meet some of the people that live there to truly have an understanding all around of what is going on there. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. April or Jim, do you want to answer that question about how this will help people?
Jim's not unmuting, so I will. Yeah, just being able to.
April, by the way, is the director of outreach for Hope Rescue Mission and the principal in charge of staffing.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, just being able to fill their basic needs and being able to take care of those things that are simple to us really does relieve a lot of stress and burden on them. So once that is relieved, they're able to step into a place to where, like, how can we help them next? And a lot of it is just getting document ready and being able to move forward. So providing a basic need is a huge step for them to actually be in a place to want to move forward.
Okay, somebody named Peppers. Whoops, hang on a second. There we go. I'm trying to unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
We good now?
Yes.
Okay, I called Mr. Hicks yesterday and didn't get a response, so I thought I better join the meeting here. My name's Ed Taylor. I live out in Target Range. I'm concerned with the safety of the residents of the new locale. When you look at the old location, there was plenty of opportunity for the residents to go shopping by themselves, to go to the local stores and all that. I'm wondering two things. How are they going to be not so isolated in the new location? How safe do you guys feel it will be so close to the highway? Are you guys going to, I shouldn't say you guys, will there be transportation provided by bus or something? Or how are they going to get around out there? And the last part of that question would be, I'm very concerned about somebody accidentally, for whatever reason, trying to cross Highway 93. What happens if that were to occur, and where would the responsibility fall on something like that?
April, is that an April question or a Jim question?
Yeah, first of all, I'm so sorry that you couldn't get through. Our poor phone system is lacking. So let me say that first of all, that you couldn't get through. We are training the residents to walk on the road that is provided from the tent site to the bike path. They walk from there across the bridge and they can access the bus by Walmart. We do have food that is being provided. We have water that is being provided for them. We are doing everything we can to make sure that they have, that it's a service-rich environment, actually even more so than it was on Reserve Street. Yes, I mean, the highway is, it's always been a concern for all citizens who would happen to be on the highway, walking on and traveling on the bike path. But we really see this being an advantage for those residents, being able to walk out to the bike path and then go across the bridge and be able to access Walmart. I really hope that answers your question.
Can I add just a little bit to that? We also have folks that are connected with case management services where they're getting picked up on site to be able to go to their appointments and take care of the things that they need to do as far as shopping and other resources that they need. We also have the River of Life has offered up their passenger bus to be able to take folks into town, to their clothing closet, to their food bank, and to be able to bring them into town twice a week.
I just want to jump in and just with a minor correction that it's not a new Reserve Street camp. That camp, many of the occupants of the illegal Reserve Street with illegal camp without resources on Reserve Street may choose to move to the temporary safe outdoor space, but it isn't. This isn't sort of a new version of that whatsoever. I'm supposed to be paying attention here. Oh, Grace Roster, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Grace Roster. I live directly behind the encampment with my husband and our 3 small children that, are playing in the field there behind them. And we had no idea about the potential for the encampment before we saw the construction happening. And I've spent the last few weeks, reaching out with question after question, trying to understand the project and the planning behind it and, how it pertains to my family and our property. So I still have 2 main questions that I'm hoping you guys can answer. The first one is regarding the temporary nature of the encampment. And if it is temporary, what's the exit strategy? Where are these people going to go, after this is over? And what is the time frame for that? And then my second question is, who are my new neighbors? I mean, I know that the individuals that are residing at the encampment were informed about the project far in advance of the neighboring properties, and 40 people is a lot of people. So I would really appreciate knowing if there will be any sexual offenders or violent criminals, living next door. And I guess those are my questions. Thanks.
Jim or April?
Let me just answer the temporary part of it. This is set up to go through March. Part of that will depend, at least in my mind, this is not official, part of that will depend upon where we are at with the COVID pandemic and congregate sheltering and how we can best help folks. But right now it is temporary in the sense of going through March. To be very honest, this has really come about so quickly and efficiently that we are currently working on the exit strategy and what that would be. It wouldn't be just a matter of releasing those residents to hopefully go find your own place now, but we are working on that strategy. What is the best for the county, the city, for those residents? That will be a part of our work for between now and the end of March. But right now, let me say again, it is temporary through the end of March. As far as the residents and their different case management, April, if you could speak to that, that would be helpful.
Well, your neighbors are just folks that are experiencing homelessness. They do have a lot of issues that we are helping them walk through. I wouldn't say that any of them are violent offenders or sex offenders. We are working with them as an intake process to go over who is on that site and making sure that when they come and leave, that we're accountable for when they're coming and when they're going. We just talked with a security company today, so that is something in the near future we'll be working with. But as far as who your neighbors are, they're just folks that are experiencing homelessness that need an opportunity to move forward in life.
Let's see, Jordan.
Hey, thank you for allowing me to ask a couple questions. Yeah, my name is Jordan. The first question I had was, so you all mentioned that there was a 40-person capacity, and Susan, I think you mentioned about 15 residents are living there currently. What was the process like of selecting people to reside in this area? And then the second question I had was, obviously within the name, it's a temporary setup. So the idea would be to find sustainable housing in the long term. So what type of outreach and support is being offered in that regard? Thank you.
Question, and I'm going to turn it over to April, who is the outreach queen.
As far as services, we are gonna, I'll go back. The way that we had the tent sites filled up and who we chose to move over there, we gave the residents at the Reserve Street encampment first choice to make sure that we can address those concerns. And during COVID, that area became more than it can handle. So we wanted to have an opportunity to give those folks first choice if they wanted to move and transition over. And right now we're working with mental health services, public defender's office, probation, parole, and just other entities that are dealing with folks who either can't stay in shelter at the Poverello or Johnson Center, or with their mental illnesses and them just not wanting to have 100 roommates during the pandemic. So we did choose, that's how we went about choosing our, vetting who was going to be on site. What was the other part of the question, Susan?
Services, housing,
Oh yeah, so we are treating this as a housing first approach. We are working with folks to get them ready to move to the next step, and that is housing. There's lots of folks that are already tied into our Missoula's coordinated entry system that we are working with to get them prepared. So when the voucher does come available, we can transition them fairly easy and working with them to get their IDs and birth certificates and application fees. And a lot of them just don't know how to navigate the system. So we're gonna work with them one-on-one to be able to do those things, to be able to succeed moving forward.
Thanks, April. Martin.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Two things. The first is a point. I assume in the media-rich environment of Missoula, there's going to be somebody making a movie about this or a documentary, since this is a kind of a unique thing that's happening, and most of us will never experience what it's like on the inside of it, which leads me to my next question, that this is essentially full-time winter camping. And that is quite a tough thing on its own, even with the, state-of-the-art equipment and experience. So I'm curious, is there a backup plan, say, if one of, our storms rolls in and wreaks havoc on this camp, or if we hit, 30 below for a while? And I know Jim's probably thought a lot about this. I think I run into you all over the mountains of Montana here, but it's a big lift to expect people to do that. And I assume you're accepting some responsibility now that you've modified the location and the rules. So I'm curious if you could address that. Thank you.
Eric, I think maybe my colleague, Eric Legvold, who was the chief logistician on the project, is a good person to answer that.
So when we built out the site, we did it in the most direct manner to provide safe, secure outdoor housing. The platform is insulated. We are getting carpet into the tents. We have an extra tarp going over the top of the tent to help with maintaining the heat that is in there. Many of the residents have their own heating sources and will be using those in the tent. We also have an emergency warming tent where we have a propane heater that will help provide emergency warmth. We will also be able to utilize all of our warming tents, which we'll have 3 by the end of the week, and use those as emergency heat sources in the times that it does get to extreme temperatures. Other than that, I would say that with many of the hotel vouchers that April and her crew will be providing, we will be able to properly respond to those extreme temperatures.
Eric, did you talk about, I'm so nervous about my administrative functions here and watching the hand raise. Did you talk about the quality of the sleeping bags and the tents?
Yeah, so we worked with a number of local businesses, and we were pleased to be able to be provided high quality 4-person capacity tents that have a reinforced bottom. And then we also have 0-degree sleeping bags. We have mountaineering closed cell foam sleeping pads and cots. And all of my experiences of running around the mountains, particularly in the wintertime, this is offering a very high quality sleeping arrangement and warmth arrangement for the inhabitants of the safe outdoor space.
Thanks, Eric. Lucas Merriweather.
Hey, how's it going? Just have a few questions for you guys. Jim, I believe he said they are training the residents of that camp to not cross Highway 93 there. How do you expect to train them, I guess, due to the fact that I've already seen people walking across that road? I drive it 3, 4, 5 times a day in that area. Also, are there any consequences for them not following those rules if, they are walking back and forth and walking along the train tracks and stuff and not using that pathway? Do you guys foresee any issues with that pathway being decently dark at night and having other patrons that walk and bike that pathway being in any sort of danger? Because I know, I've heard from a lot of people that walking on North Reserve sidewalks, over the bridge at night is not something that you would want to do by yourself. Also, temporary wise, doesn't the city have a hotel for housing that they bought? I'm not sure the situation on that, but just out of curiosity, why are hotel vouchers being given out when maybe there's a hotel for us to use? Whenever somebody drives by there, it doesn't seem like there's many people staying there. And final question is, do you guys not have any concerns for the businesses in the area? I experienced something while I was in the Silver Slipper the other day with a homeless man that was in there. And he defecated himself in the hallway of that business. That doesn't bring any sort of want for people to be patrons of that business. And especially during COVID times, it's hard already for businesses to try to stay open and, make money and have patrons be there. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I can just quickly say I'm not an expert on this, but I do believe the Sleepy Inn is solely for people who've tested COVID positive and have no place else to go, that it's not general housing. And anybody else of the presenters with more information than that can please correct me. But so that has been occupied with COVID positive people with nowhere else to go, is my understanding. Second, I would say we have concerns for the businesses. We understand. I would just say that incident that you described happened well before this encampment opened. And I think there've been a lot of issues with homelessness. There are, I know, it's not that I think, I know. We have like every community in the country, we have a problem with chronically unhoused people that far predates this temporary solution. I will leave it to April and Jim. Jim, I see you're unmuted to answer the rest of the questions.
Yeah, I too have traveled that quite a bit and quite a bit on the bike path at many different times. And there's always been a concern about the safety there. Again, long before this site was ever vetted, people crossing in both illegal and unsafe ways. Our training, if that is the right word, our training will be that they have, the residents do have some rights and responsibilities that once again they review, they sign when they come on the property, they are posted, they are reviewed by the staff when they leave, when they come back, and those routes are open for them, and they want to do the safest thing they can as well. It's just not that they're out there wandering around. Those that in the past that I've recognized in that area, the transient population, that's been there, like Susan was saying, long before we got there, and probably will continue. We wish that wasn't the case, and we wish we could get those folks in the temporary safe outdoor space if they would sign the rights and responsibilities. But Lucas, we're just going to do our absolute best to help the residents follow these guidelines that we've set out so that they can stay there. Then you asked, what if they don't comply? If they don't comply, they will be asked to leave. We have a system that we are developing for that in the sense of talking through, is it 1 or 2 strikes? What is the severity? It's private property, so can we trespass them? Talked with the sheriff's department about this as well. So this is a working project as we face each situation.
And thanks, Jim. Adrienne, just to go back to you, I understand that I missed you trying to signal that perhaps you wanted to say something in response to the previous question about the Sleepy Inn. Adrienne Beck is Director of the Missoula County Office of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Susan. And while I think you addressed the question pretty accurately, I just wanted to be clear that the Sleepy Inn, which is being utilized for non-congregate shelter through the Federal Emergency Management Agency Public Assistance Program, has very strict guidelines that exclusively prohibit us from using it for homeless housing. Its sole purpose is for isolation and quarantine for individuals who have nowhere else to carry out that function.
Thank you for doing a much better job answering that question than I did. Somebody named EFOB MacBook. You can unmute. I think you're still muted. But I unmuted you.
And how about now?
Okay, perfect. Oh, I know that voice.
Yeah, sorry, it's Ed O'Brien from Montana Public Radio, and you'd think I'd have the hang of Zoom by now.
All right, get with it.
This is a question, I guess, for Ms. Seat. Follow up on Grace Roster's question. Can you definitively say there are no violent or sexual offenders there at the encampment that the Roster family needs to be concerned about? And with that, I will mute.
I cannot say that right now, but we are in the process of, we'll be able to know that here in the near future as our intake process will allow us to check on those things and we can be transparent about it.
Thank you.
Did somebody else want to answer? Andy Mefford.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? I guess as a follow-up to that, I did have on that question about the sexual or violent offenders, we've now said that we don't know if they're there or not, but when we learn, is that a reason for ejection from the site? Are you going to house those individuals if you learn that they are there? I'm against the project in whole, in principle, for a number of reasons. I think it's just yet another location to distract law enforcement, to have yet another location to respond to all about town. I drove into the site and there was no guard in place. There was extra tents already in place, not on the pads. There's been no public process to gain any kind of approval for this project. The project has moved forward irrespective of any approval process, has been totally negated, and no public process has happened. I have sent emails to the state. I have sent emails to a number of local officials asking a lot of questions about the processes that any other individual would have to go through, with the DEQ telling me they've never heard of the project, to other local officials just not responding. There's zoning problems that no one else would be able to go through without zoning. There's campground licensing, public accommodation requirements, public water and sewer requirements, paving air stagnation zone requirements that have been ignored at this point or not addressed. I saw something on the website that says it's been for the future or delayed. So does that mean in the spring it's going to get paved whenever we're back to paving? It's in a mapped floodplain. We went and did work in a floodplain without a floodplain permit or any public process that's required. Has MDT been asked about this approach change? Public works and grading and drainage and stormwater. You know, where does this stuff come from? The gravel that's brought in, we have this concept it's paid for and it's free money. It's not free money, it's taxpayer money, whether it's federal or local, it's still taxpayer money. And there's just a lot of process that has been ignored, that the best I can tell has been swept under the rug to plow this forward. And that's very disappointing because I work in a field that represents private sector and does a lot of work, and they get put through the coals to do a project like this. And this project just happens overnight because there's an emergency. And I think that's very disappointing. I think that ought to raise a lot of people's brow to say, how are we letting this happen? I said on planning boards and other things, and whenever there's public projects, even then when they don't follow the rules, they at least have to come to a public forum, which is kind of just a cheerleader effort where you can't condition, you can't do anything about it. You just sit there and say, but at least there's a public forum. That hasn't even happened. So it's very disappointing that we've just let this been plowed through. And I think there ought to be a lot of accountability for that. And it's just extremely, I'm curious what anyone has to say about that. It seems like the concept is we don't want to talk about that. And we're going to work on zoning. The zoning meeting set for December 17th. What's the point of showing up to a zoning meeting on December 17th when the project's done and half occupied? How does the public feel?
Thanks, Andy. I'd like to give people the opportunity to answer those questions.
I'd love to hear it.
Chet and Adrian, I think these are best fielded by you. Chet Krauser, who is the Community Planning Services Officer for Missoula County, and again, Adrian Beck.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. And thanks, Andy, for your question. I know you have sent a note to, or at least an email to some folks in the county, and I've received that. And I think the questions you've asked today are pretty similar to what's in your email. You use the term swept under the rug, and I don't think that that's maybe the appropriate way to look at the approach here. I think things have happened quickly. There's certainly a lot of unknowns about how to respond to an emergency situation. I know for one, probably all of us wish we had some predictability in this world around COVID-19. It's just not something that we have the luxury of. The hearing you mentioned is planned for tomorrow. That's been noticed. Some of the findings, I guess, surrounding this are included with the packet for that meeting, and we're certainly encouraging folks to use that as an opportunity to share some of their thoughts in a public setting in front of the county commissioners. I know they're looking forward to getting that input. In response to your questions, more specific questions about the regulatory process and what folks would normally need to go through, I think it's worth just pointing out that this isn't a normal situation. And we've heard the words temporary used. It's in response to COVID. It's really being managed in accordance with our emergency response. And I'll let Adrian weigh in on that in a second. But that doesn't mean that we are ignoring the fact that those are parts of our process that would need to come into play in a quote unquote more normal situation. Right now just isn't the appropriate time to put those through the process because we aren't entirely sure what the pandemic might bring, and we're not really sure what what needs or what changes might exist in the future. So I guess just the key points again are, one, that this isn't an attempt to sweep anything under the rug. We're fully aware that there is a regulatory side to all of this that would apply in a normal set of circumstances. But for right now, the response is to the emergency and to the needs of the community relative to the pandemic. So with that, maybe I'll hand it over to Adrian if you'd like to add anything more.
Thanks, Chet, and thanks, Andy. I think that was pretty succinct. You know, I'll talk about this in the context of an emergency and really why we ask our elected officials to declare an emergency amid fire season, flood season, and as we begin to climb into this COVID situation, not only nationwide but here in Missoula County, we asked the commissioners and the city council to sign an emergency declaration back in March. And the primary purpose for declaring an emergency is it's a way to officially acknowledge and recognize that emergencies and disasters often occur and develop under extraordinary conditions at a much faster rate than can be accommodated by standard administrative procedures. And this is something that we face when, no matter what the emergency is. COVID is not unique in that term, in that we rely on the ability to be able to respond effectively, quickly, and that's done in the notion that it is an emergent need and that it will be temporary. And I think that this project really highlights that.
Thanks, Adrian. Let's see, Spencer Schacht. I believe you are a reporter.
Yes, it's actually Tessa Nato. Somehow I'm.
Oh, hi.
I guess I'm logged into our other reporters.
Hey, Tessa, can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, but not great.
Weird. This always happens.
There, that's better. That's better.
I'll try to talk loud, but I just wanted to ask about, I know I saw in the press release that it talks about looking for additional funding for this temporary space. And so I was wondering where you are trying to get that funding from and what you're doing to get it.
I'll jump in first, and then Jim, if you had anything to add, that United Way and Hope Rescue, our local faith community, we are, after the COVID funding stops, which is set for December 31, we are committed to raising the necessary resources to keep the site open through the winter. Have I identified sources? Not yet. We have had some contributions. We will continue to seek funding. Jim, do you want to add?
Yeah, that's the same here. We are seeking different grants, filling out different grants, applying for grants as we speak. Even this morning, there was some breakthroughs in different grants. So we are presently pursuing that funding, and we have some very faithful, generous partners that are behind us as well, that continue to demonstrate their support. So that is a part of the ongoing work, is the funding for this after the first of the year.
Thanks. Let's see. Kylie McGowan.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So I, unlike a lot of other people on this call, am not going to thank you for relocating a homeless camp next to my neighborhood. I appreciate everything that Andy had to say and share the same concerns. I live in Lower Miller Creek, and I find your answer as to not being able to tell us whether there's violent or sexual predators living in that camp extremely unacceptable, especially considering how close it is to Jeanette Rankin Elementary School. I think that's something you need to rectify ASAP. And I want to know how you were planning on keeping all of the community members and businesses in the area safe. And this is an allegedly temporary camp, but it's not going to hold everybody that lives under the Reserve Street Bridge. So what are you going to do for those people? Are there going to be more temporary camps going up?
Thanks for the question. Jim, April?
Let April answer this as well, but as far as I know right now, there are no sexual offenders there. We know the people that are there. So there's no violent or sexual offenders there. If that didn't come through clear, I want to underscore that right now. The intake process for, for people we don't know will include that kind of vetting. But right now, there are no violent or sexual offenders on site. And boy, I've lots of, I like to, so Andy, you're still on. If you could get a hold of me, I can answer some of those other questions that you had as well regarding campground, floodplain, all those kinds of things that we went through. April, do you have anything further you'd like to add on that?
What I would like to add is that we now have an opportunity to build out more outreach in this area on the south side of town. Myself and other staff members that are going to and from this site have been regularly driving through the business owners' parking lots, the Silver Slipper, and seeing if we can identify anybody that's loitering or hanging around there, so we can approach them and see how we can help them to move forward, or what we can do to help out the businesses in this area with more outreach.
And I will say that it's not really an allegedly temporary camp. It is a temporary camp, and we've done everything we can to make that clear. Peter Christian, or Peter C, which might be Peter Christian. You can unmute. Or not.
Okay, there we are.
There you are.
You hear me? Thank you. I did a report on this, on the camp when it first opened, thanks to the open house. And I also visited with some business people and I believe some city and county officials last Thursday when they had a community meeting. And there was a misunderstanding about some incidents that had occurred that inferred that they came from the TSOS, when it was pointed out to me, and of course in this meeting as well, that the camp hadn't even been opened yet. So we apologize for that confusion. However, one of the problems with this issue, and I realize this is a huge sociological issue in itself, is the grouping of the homeless community with transients that travel through the area. Many times, as we all know, transients aggressively panhandle. Some are mentally disturbed, potentially violent. How can you, as experts in this field, in this issue, can you help all the rest of the Missoula community understand the difference between the two and how we can help in any way we can?
Again, I am going to defer to Jim and April.
Well, I guess that's one of the reasons we are in this field, is learning the complications of this large, vast group of people, that even to say homeless and transient in as two categories does not fit. There are so many nuances in all of this. So our approach has been to build relationships with those that we can, to see how we can help them out of their web of problems or obstacles or misguided thinking. That's what we're trained to do. That's the path that we've seen forward. Is it can't be taking these two groups and taking them certain ways. It has to be for the best results, one-on-one, building relationships and moving forward. That's very difficult. Some do not respond. Some do respond. And that's really kind of the job that we face. We wish that we could just build a relationship with a person, and then in a week or two later, they're on the right path. But it's not that simple at all. But our approach, at least at Hope Rescue Mission, has been to build relationships, to see how we can help somebody become safe and secure, whether it's no matter where they're at right now, to help begin them move forward. Like April said, sometimes it is just helping with documentation. It's helping them navigate things that for many of us are normal and things we do every day, but for others is completely overwhelming because of their situation in life. And that's how we have chosen, is to move in, build relationships, see what we can do one person at a time. We realize it's an overwhelming job, but that's what we feel our call is and what we need to do. And I see April's unmuted, and she has so much experience in this.
I would just like to add that we are partners with Reaching Home, the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And through that, we have been able to all work together as organizations to be able to identify who are our people that are experiencing homelessness. And through that program, we've been able to create a bigger outreach team with the Poverello, Western Montana Mental Health, Open Aid Alliance, several organizations where we're able to outreach in areas that we couldn't before, but to be able to identify like who are the ones that are experiencing homelessness here in Missoula and who are those passing through. And sometimes like through our ministry 549 Hope, we're able to help them get to home wherever home is. But through that Reaching Home and coordinated entry system, we're able to identify who we're working with and how we can work with those who are chronically homeless and most vulnerable to get them into housing, and really work one-on-one with those who can just self-resolve but don't know how to navigate the system.
Thanks. Julie Anton.
Hi. So it's being called a temporary space, but from what I understand from this call, there's no exit plan. There's not really an end date. A significant amount of resources and money is going towards this. So the question I have to you, is there any chance at all that this turns into a permanent space?
I mean, I'll just jump in and say that this site is envisioned as temporary. Our goal is to get people into housing. As everybody in Missoula knows, we have a housing crisis in our community, even for people who face little to no barriers to housing. There is no plan to turn this into a permanent encampment. The plan is, the hope is, the work every day is to find appropriate, sustainable housing that people can move into, because this is not an answer to homelessness. I'll turn it over to anyone else, Jim or April.
And I would like to say, quite a few of the folks that are staying on site right now, they do have full-time jobs at minimum wage. So being able to help them get into housing, you have to have 3 times the rent. So there are a ton of hurdles just to get into housing, even with people who are working full-time at a minimum wage job, but being able to work with them one-on-one to be able to move them forward. So it's an opportunity that those folks that were residing in Reserve Street, that now there's an opportunity to work with them one-on-one, have case management on site where they're able to come and meet them, meet their needs where they're at.
Krista Weathers.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to voice support for this project and applaud the cross-sector collaboration to make this happen. I have participated in cleanups and provided services at the Reserve Street camp, and I can tell you that there's a huge environmental impact and certainly a lot of harms to those individuals experiencing homelessness at that site. I think this is, while not the perfect option for a lot of folks, homelessness is happening in our community, whether it's in our neighborhood or not. It's been happening down at the Reserve Street encampment for years. This is a more controlled, safe solution. I would suggest that the people working on this are taking accountability for lives and for the health and safety of our community. It's certainly, I'm a harm reduction advocate, and that's about finding not maybe the perfect solution or ending homelessness right now, but it really is about making it safer for everyone. And in my opinion, this is a step in the right direction. I would also caution the community from villainizing homelessness. That suggestion that violent and sexual offenders are overrepresented in the homeless community is risky, I would suggest. I live in central Missoula. I recently did a scan of my neighborhood and I'm surrounded by registered violent and sexual offenders with addresses attached to their names. So just a reminder that being homeless is not a crime.
Thanks, Chris. Gina Mansour.
Hi. My comment is actually quite similar to the last person. I also live in central Missoula. My children have grown up playing at Sacagawea Park, shopping at the Orange Street Food Farm, and living among homeless residents. That's been part of their growing up experience. And also, I know there are a number of sexual and violent predators that live in my neighborhood, in every neighborhood, in Grant Creek, in Miller Creek, across our community. So what I appreciate about Missoula is that my kids live in a community that takes steps like this to support members of our community who don't have many of the privileges that many of us commenting on this meeting have in our lives: physical and mental health, financial resources, or a home. And I do think that especially during a pandemic, this is truly an emergency. And I support your efforts to develop this temporary camp, and that this defines who we are as a society, how we treat members of our society who need that support. So I do support your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh Decker.
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Decker. I'm a resident of Ward 1, and I work with the Western Montana chapter of Democratic Socialists of America. I applaud your efforts to implement the temporary space as a stopgap measure to something that has been alluded to on this call. And it's sometimes, might get some eye rolls when people mention it, but the problem that we're facing is rampant, targeted attacks by capitalism on the working class. And April alluded to it before, when someone that's working a full-time job at minimum wage can't afford to be in a house, that's a problem with capitalism. And we can bandy around solutions, that are temporary and that are, targeted at the population that is currently homeless. But there's 19 or 20 million Americans that are at risk of being evicted on January 1st once the eviction freeze is ended. That's a little less than 6% of America. And in Missoula, that number is a little bit less than 4,500 people. So folks are going to continue to need these services unless we look up the ladder. And I'm curious what the involved organizations are doing to address the root cause, which is rampant, unchecked capitalism.
I'll take a stab at that. I would probably say, not as much as you would want. I think that we work hard to advance the goals of the 10-year plan, which is to make homelessness in Missoula rare, brief, and non-recurring. I think Missoula's made more strides than many places in the country in terms of public sector support and truly heroic work by nonprofits to move beyond treating shelter as the answer to homelessness and advocate for housing solutions, because, and Josh, I know you know this, we're not going to Poverello Center or a United Way or Hope Rescue Mission our way to the end of homelessness, or end it by putting people in cheap motels. And I'm sure it does relate, of course, to capitalism, but I just am going to stick by my mantra that the answer to homelessness is housing. There is no one size fits all, easy, affordable, or easy, cheap approach to housing, just like there is no the homeless. We've heard a lot of, I think, suppositions about who the population is. And that would be my answer, and I welcome my colleagues to jump in with other answers. But my answer is we are going to continue to try to address stereotypes about homeless people, try to get people to stop talking about the homeless, and try to find appropriate, sustainable housing for our very diverse homeless population.
I would just like to echo Susan and like they're experiencing homelessness, they're not homeless. And that's the biggest, that like there's a lot of myths that go on about why people are homeless and the violent crimes. A lot of folks are just, there's a lot of stories behind that. So I would just encourage those who are on this call that don't fully understand what homelessness is to reach out so we can have those conversations.
Thanks, April. Our time is pretty much up. I just want to say that I thank you all for civility and asking good questions. And to those of you who oppose this project, we get it. You're good people who care about and do a lot for your community, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And we know you are angry and frustrated. We share that with you. We're angry and frustrated too. You're angry and frustrated because there are homeless people in your businesses and in your neighborhoods. We're angry and frustrated about that too. And that despite decades of work and billions of dollars invested, our country has yet to make a dent in ending homelessness. And as I said, Missoula is a lot farther ahead than many other communities in the country. And the answer to homelessness is housing. We are angry and frustrated that we are accused of wasting money on programs that don't work, like just throwing money away, instead of facing the fact that too little money has been invested in programs that do work to end homelessness. So we feel your anger and we understand it because we feel it too. And those of us who are behind this project want to move from fixing blame to fixing problems, to translate our anger and frustration and frankly our sadness into permanent housing solutions for everybody in need, even the ones we don't like and the ones who don't like us. And until everyone moves beyond their anger, whether we're either hosting or hating short-term solutions like the temporary safe outdoor space, we're going to be stuck in the same cycle we have been stuck in for decades, cobbling together underfunded emergency projects instead of working on finding appropriate, sustainable homes for our very diverse population of people experiencing homelessness. That is just a fact. So to wrap up, we're committed to the success of this project. We know it's a temporary solution. We also continue to work every day on permanent solutions that would make homelessness in Missoula rare, brief, and one time only. We invite you to join us. And with that, thank you very much to the city and county and Hope Rescue Mission and everybody who attended today to learn the facts about this project. And have a great rest of your day.